and lawyers that they were doing the right thing, and they finally realized, hey, they're not getting any of this. They don't understand, and they don't care. And the point is that you reach the point where you realize that there is something inside that kid. You have no control over that, and you're not responsible for that. So, hey, bless you for doing what you did. I hope that this all turns out well for you, the other children in your family, and your wife. I think you did the right thing. I told you before when I talked to you about this that you have my support. I mean, I totally understand what you're going through.
Well, it comes down to a day. I mean, he's 26 years old. He needs to be self-sufficient.
That's right.
How can I say it? I mean, I know other people are going through what I have. I know that maybe the same thing. They're scared, especially the husbands. They're scared to, go up to their wife and say, hey, we can't have this going on again with either a daughter or a son or whatever is causing the issue. I realize now, probably for the last, 8 years, that I've been enabling him. And it has really destroyed my life financially. It has destroyed a lot of my marriage. It's not, like it was before because of the stress. I can see my wife. My wife works and has to commute 90 miles a day going to work and back.
That's a long way.
And she works 9-10 hours a day. And then I can see it. Sometimes she just didn't want to come home because when she came home, what was she coming home to? Up to my last injury, I could get out of the house and get on my motorcycle and ride and forget about it for a day. But being cooped up for the last, since June, I have had to live a living hell like nobody could ever imagine. And again, the last time we talked about this a little bit on the air, I had probably a good 100 emails or more from people going through the same thing I've gone through. Husbands telling me they're scared because they love their wife. They don't want a divorce. They bring it up to their wife. Hey, we got to do something with our daughter. We got to do something with her son. The first thing the wife goes, no, if you do, I'll divorce you. So that's what
I went through that same movie over and over and over again, and I remember the piece de resistance was I had been handling a case involving a serial rapist, and it got to the point where just to come home and mellow out, I would pour myself 3 fingers of scotch because I got really tired of dealing with this individual. He was creating a lot of hell on earth for a lot of women in Snohomish County. And how, can you come home and you're dealing with that, and then you're dealing with the type of situation that you're going, that you just got through describing? How do you do that easily? You don't. I think that you did everything humanly possible, and I know that there are a lot of people that are listening that know of what I speak, and all I can say to them is that you have my sympathy, you have my empathy, and if you end up kicking that child out of the house because you have reached the end of your tether, you have my empathy, and I understand that because I understand that there are kids in this world, and they can make life a living hell for their parents. And like I said, you have my total empathy.
Well, it's not just me; it's the people out there going through and I'm sure there's a lot of people going through it. And
oh yeah, there are.
And you know what? You can't get help. If you have a situation where you have a son that has a mental condition and he's in the hospital because whatever he did, right? You sit there and they say, well, he's over 18. We really can't do anything about it. We might be able to get a social worker to come in and talk to him. But, it's funny. Some of these people can sit on there and be totally, how can you say it? Schizophrenic. But when you bring a social worker in or a law enforcement or another person, it happens to be there, they can put an
they
act
act
on.
like they're just fine.
Yeah, they act totally normal. And that's,
I know.
your mouth just drops open, It's just like, wow.
Well, I'll put it this way. My former stepson had a one-eyed demon that inhabited him. And what he ended up doing, unfortunately, he'd been out of my life for a few years when this happened, was it was summertime. There was a very attractive, she was only 14 years old, but very attractive girl that lived in this apartment complex where he was. So he went through her bedroom window at night, raped her, and this all came out in the trial. And when she said, okay, well, you got what you wanted, you can leave now, he said, no, I think I'm going to stay around for a little bit longer. That presence inside that person knew exactly what they were doing. And all I can say is that, you reach the point where you have to say no. You have to say, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. I'm not going to do this. And if there's something that you can do about it, and if they're 18 or older, if going through the system with juveniles is a real trip in and of itself. But
oh yeah, tell me about it.
In your particular case, you've got a 26-year-old son who's an adult and knows exactly what he is doing, and he will continue to play you and your wife just like a fiddle for as long as he possibly can because it's owed to him in his mind.
Oh, yeah. And I don't want this all be about me, but, I'm just using me as an example for other people that are going through it. But even my radio show, I was computer illiterate. When I was in broadcasting commercially, I had an engineer on the other side of the window, or I operated the mixing board. It was very simple. There was no computers involved. Right. I didn't have to worry about it. And when there was computers on some of the stations I worked at, I didn't control it. It was the other person did. So he would point at me, let me know when the commercials were and all this stuff. Now, I didn't know how to do a website. My wife sat down there and tried to do a website. This is back, a couple years ago. And she was working on it. My son comes in and tells her, hey, you're doing it all wrong, starts yelling and screaming at her. She starts crying and says, I can't do this, and walks out. Well, then my son goes, well, Dad, I'll do it. And I said, well, I don't know. The next thing I know, he did a website, and I'll tell you what, it was horrible. I mean, he put everything on Amazon on it. It was a cluttered, I didn't, whatever. I was embarrassment. But then all of a sudden, he started, in his mind, he's the one that started the radio show. It was his radio show, and I stole it from him. Can you believe that? And, this is the type of things I had to deal with. And it's been very stressful. I have to deal with a bunch of radio stations. I have to deal with guests. I have to deal with booking. I have to deal with, the electronics, keeping this going. And I tell you, I sure didn't need all the other stress. And I'll be honest with you. Like I said, I'm relieved. I wish, honestly, I would have done this. I wish I would have been a man and stepped up and told him, 5 years ago, move out.
Let's back up a little bit. I wouldn't beat yourself up too badly, and I'll tell you why. That realization came after you have gone through the pain and anguish of the damned as a parent. And I would not, I think a lot of parents feel guilty later. Oh, gee, I did this and I did that, until they come to the realization that they are being played like a fiddle. And I hate to say that, but it's true. That intelligence or that presence inside that human body knows exactly what it's doing in many, 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 many cases. And you are not responsible for that. Your wife is not responsible for that. Your other children aren't responsible for that. The thing of it is that the spark has to come on, and your son's going to have to realize that, if he's going to sink or swim, that's going to be up to him.
Well,
and you can go through all the guilt all the guilt that you want to, but don't, because you did everything you possibly could, Gary.
Well, the funny thing was, what I was trying to say is, for the past week, I haven't felt any guilt.
Good for you.
I feel relieved.
That's a step in the right direction.
I feel relieved, like I have not felt in years. It's just like something was just taken off my shoulders. And I tell you what, it makes even doing the show even more fun. And because I never had even doing the show, I have a complete studio in my house. It would rival any studio in a radio station. Seriously, I have put that much work into it. But I was I always was scared, and he has done it. I'll be talking and interviewing a guest. If I didn't have a kill switch with a 7-second delay, you would be surprised what would have been coming over the air. It was scary.
No, I probably wouldn't, but yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying.
So what I'm saying to any listener out there, if you have a situation with a son or daughter, sit down and talk to your wife. And if that doesn't work, well, then I really recommend you make the right decision. And if it's not working out, and if your child is over 21 or over 18, you got to make that decision. Are you going to risk your relationship with your wife? Are you going to risk having a heart attack or getting hurt over a situation?
Are you going to risk coming home with a firearm that you thought you had secured and it's not there, and this kid is very upset at you and end up, on the receiving end of serious bodily injury and or death?
Yeah, and that could go either way. You know that. That's the scary part. Anyway, it's time to, go on a break. We'll be back in about 3 minutes, and then I want to talk to you about your music. What got you going and all that stuff. So go get a cup of Java or something. We'll be back with Tom Davis here right after the break. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio After Dark.
If you would like to hear Night Dreams Talk Radio,